Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of The Standard is the Standard. I'm Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. We have an action-packed show for you tonight. We're talking a little bit of Bucks Steelers week 3, but we're talking a lot about Ravens Steelers week 4 coming up. Let me introduce my co-host, as always, Lance Williams. Lance, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, listeners. Just ready to talk about some ball. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. You had a key point you wanted to talk about. I'll let you go ahead and kick it off tonight.
Monday night's football game, I kind of wanted to talk about, this season and what we've seen in the first couple of games. And, we've seen some ups, we've seen some downs. Obviously, the Steelers get their first win on Monday night against the Buccaneers. Gritty second half performance to hold on to that victory. But the one thing I want to ask you, Jeff, and listeners, if you're on the live chat, I want you to chime in as well. Which half best represents this football team in 2008? Is it the first half? Is it the team that jumped out to a 30-10 win, or a 30-10 lead? Or is it the team in the second half that struggled on offense, was struggling on defense, and held on to win that football game? In your opinion, Jeff, and listeners out there on the live chat, which half best reflects this football team at this moment in time?
That's a really, really difficult question to answer based on the fact that if you look at the body of work that they've put on the field so far, it's been nothing but inconsistent from top to bottom. But if I had to guess, and maybe it's just because in my mind, I had the way that the Steelers played in the first half was my expectation for the way this team was going to play in general in 2018. That was kind of the defense that I saw, and I was like, I think this defense could be pretty decent. And they showed out, and they were playing pretty decent football. And then in the second half, when the offense wasn't possessing the ball, the Tampa Bay Bucks seemingly were just taking these long time-consuming drives. They were gassed, and they were gashed at the same time. They were gassed physically and gashed in the performance side of things. But in my mind, I still think that in terms of expectations and where I think this team could go, it's that first half team. But at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, the inconsistencies of this team are astronomical. It's ridiculous. So with that being said, I could definitely see the second half being the trend as well. I honestly don't know. Go grab yourself a freaking quarter, flip it. Heads is first half, tails is the second half, and that's literally what I feel like we could see every week with this team. You have no clue. What do you think?
Well, I'm not going to let you get off that easily.
First half. First half. I'm going to say first half. There you go.
And see, Jeff's answer of first half goes with our personality type. Jeff is going to say first half because Jeff is joy.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the second half because I'm pain. We may not do the joy and pain segment, but that's a segment we're going to run out every once in a while, joy and pain. I'm going to say the second half. And the reason why I'm going to say the second half, and some of you guys are going to laugh at me when I say this statement. We'll hear the responses on the live chat very soon. Who do you think, Jeff, I would say is the most important player on the Pittsburgh Steelers defense?
I'm going to say Joe Hayden.
You would be in the right direction, but actually it's Artie Burns.
Okay.
Artie Burns is the most important player on this defense because we've seen the astronomical passing numbers. I mean, the Steelers are ranked 7th in the National Football League in scoring, and they're averaging 29.3 points per game, and they're 7th. The Kansas City Chiefs are averaging 10 more points a game at 39. I say that to say scoring is at a premium right now in the National Football League, and passing games are ridiculous. You need 2 solid corners to compete. And right now, we know Joe Hayden. We know the Joe Hayden impact. How many catches did Deshaun Jackson have in that game? 2?
Maybe.
So we know the Joe Hayden factor. That's a given. But imagine how good this defense would be if Artie Burns were playing to a first-round grade and they had 2 solid number 1 cornerbacks in that secondary. You'd be talking about a much better defense. So with all that, It's the second half because Artie Burns is inconsistent. The secondary is inconsistent. And in this National Football League, you're going to have to be able to get pass rush and you're going to have to hold up in coverage. And I just don't think they have good enough people in the back end. So I think the second half is more indicative of what this football team is in 2018. Throw the penalties in that mix as well, and it's the second half.
I can't disagree with you. I literally can't because we've all witnessed exactly what the Steelers have done through weeks 1 through 3. At the same time, though, I can't I can't say that there's no room for potential improvement. Here's a group of guys that still might not be comfortable playing with one another. You look at Terrell Edmonds, who started 2 of the 3 games as a rookie. I feel like he's only going to get better. Artie Burns still has a lot of potential. You see him make big plays and then boneheaded plays the next. Some players have eliminated those boneheaded plays or at least minimized those boneheaded plays in their game. You look at the pass rush. I'm not sold on the outside linebackers, but in terms of Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt, I feel like there's room for improvement there. John Bostic hasn't been as bad as we all predicted he would be. I'm not saying he's great, but he hasn't been as bad. Sean Davis hasn't been as bad as some people thought. So, yeah, I can't disagree with you, Lance, but at the same time, it's my optimistic nature to think that there's a legitimate chance that this defense can improve. Are they going to improve to a top 10 unit, top 5 unit? Hell no. That's just not in the cards. But can they improve to the point where they keep people off of 30 points and give their offense a chance to win a game? I think so. I really do think so because that first half against Tampa Bay was no fluke, in my opinion. Yeah, they got some lucky bounces with turnovers, but you still had to take advantage of those turnovers. We've seen this team drop those interceptions and not get those fumble recoveries, and they did that. So I see what you're saying. I cannot disagree with you, but I'm going to say that the first half is still my answer. That's just me.
Well, we know how you are, Jeff.
I feel like a lot of people like that. Yeah, everyone's all down on the team anyway, so we'll give you a little positivity today. Now let's go to our next segment. And this is our stat. Maybe we'll call it the stat geek segment because stats I've always felt are people that dig into stats are kind of nerdy in their own little way. And Lance and I are both a little nerdy in our own little way. And we found one unique statistic. Some about the Steelers, mine's about the upcoming matchup with the Ravens that we think will be interesting and also noteworthy when it comes to the game that's about to take place or indicative of the team itself. So, Lance, you have yours ready. Why don't you go ahead and go first?
Well, mine is more indicative of the team itself, and it's also indicative of the point that I made about Artie Burns being the most important factor on the Steelers defense. And let me point out this stat. The Steelers are currently last in the National Football League, the defense in touchdown passes given up. They've given up 10 touchdown passes, and they've given up 15 plays of 20 yards or more in the passing game, which is 29th. But the stat is they're last in the National Football League as a defense giving up touchdown passes with 10 in 3 weeks. That's an astronomical number. That's a little bit more than 3 a game. That's given up almost 48 touchdown passes in a season if it were to average out like that. That has to get fixed. And that was just an alarming stat that I found when I looked at this defense statistically.
Yeah, well, there is a caveat there. I mean, the last 2 weeks they've played the 2 hottest quarterbacks in the league. And they gave up what Fitzpatrick ended up with 3 on Monday night and 6, obviously, to Mahomes. That's 9 right there. And then Tyrod Taylor or Tyrod or T-Rod. I'm not sure how he says his name these days, but that guy that's no longer starting. Yeah,
Baker's
right. So there you have it. That's bad. And so I'm going to tell you something that's not going to help fans' confidence in coming into this week's game. And that is the Baltimore Ravens red zone offense. Now, we know that the Steelers red zone defense up until Monday night was a concern. Lance had talked about that a lot. And they actually stood tall. They were 2 for 5. They gave out of 5 attempts, they gave up 2 scores on Monday night, which is pretty darn good. They actually got a red zone turnover. That was the Bostic deflection that ended up in a Mike Hilton interception. Before that, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong. Before that, the Steelers had yet to get a red zone stop, correct?
Correct.
And the Baltimore Ravens offense is 12 for 12 in the red zone this year. They have yet to be stopped in the red zone. And we're going to talk about that offense here coming up. And the headline of this podcast and what I'm going to run on the website tomorrow is that this is not. We're going to talk a little bit about the Bucs before we go to the Ravens, but this is not going to be your typical Ravens Steelers game. Just telling you that right now. If you're thinking 13-6 final score, you're drunk. It's not going to happen. So, anything to add to that red zone statistic there, Lance?
That's incredible. I mean, and that's just where the NFL is. I mean, when we think of the Ravens, we don't think of a team that's averaging 32 points a game, which is fifth in the National Football League, and a team that is that efficient in the red zone. But that's where the NFL is, that a Raven team is averaging that many points and is that good in that area of the field. And that's just what it is right now. You can't hit receivers. You can't hit the quarterback. Hell, you can't even get in the same zip code as a quarterback. So, you're going to have prolific offenses and they're going to tear teams up. And, defense might be about just not giving up the whole kit and caboodle as opposed to stopping anybody.
Right.
That's just where it is.
Yeah. Okay. So before we go forward, let's rewind it a little bit. I kind of went out of order. That's my bad. Let's go back to Tampa Bay. Let's go back to Monday Night Football. Heroes and Zeros segments. This is a segment we do every week where we identify one player who is a hero and one player who is a zero for whatever reason. It might be someone that you expect. It might be obvious. It might be someone that no one's talking about. Lance, go ahead with your heroes and zeros first.
My hero of the game, of course, was Vance McDonald. I mean, anytime you can turn a guy's name from Chris to Christina, hey, he's the man. I mean, look, he took the man's manhood, and Conti is now out on IR. I'm hoping Vance with the stiff arm did knock him out.
They said reports are now that he played that game with a partially torn PCL in his knee. And it was just after that play when his soul was removed from his body that they found that it was completely torn. I don't know.
Partially torn ego. I mean, come on, man. He pulled that guy's skirt up. I mean, he turned him from Chris to Christina, man. It's terrible. The zero again is Boswell. Boswell has to get it right. But also the zero might be special teams as a unit. The punter's inconsistent. The place kicker's inconsistent. The coverage teams are inconsistent. So I'm going to go with Boswell as a zero and the entire special teams unit as, maybe Boswell's a -1 and the special teams unit is a zero. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, okay, that you can't complain with either of those. I'm going to go hero with Juju Smith-Schuster, and it would be obvious to say Ben Roethlisberger. I said him last week. I'm not saying it again. I think that Juju Smith-Schuster, and I said this before we went on the air, is having, in my opinion, one of the best receiving seasons in the league right now, and no one's talking about him. I believe he's third in the National Football League with receiving yards right now. He has 27 receptions. He's averaging 13.2 a catch. He has a touchdown for 356 yards receiving. And let me look at his targets here. He's been targeted 38 times. So that's a really good catch percentage that he has right there. And he has 151 of those 356 yards are coming after the catch. Juju Smith-Schuster, a lot of people wondered, and I said this in my winners and losers column for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, when I had him on the winners list, a lot of people wondered, well, what's he going to be able to do without Martavis Bryant? Geez, all right over there?
Okay, yeah.
A lot of people were wondering, like, hey, is he going to be able to, without Martavis, taking the top off the defense, is he going to be able to fill that void of Martavis's production? Shoot, I think he's already gotten more yardage than Martavis did all last season in 3 games. Juju Smith-Schuster, guys, I said this after the post game. If you haven't gotten a number 19 jersey, I would get one because I think it's a safe bet. My loser is Cody Sensabaugh. And maybe he's a scapegoat for the secondary, but I don't care. I just don't understand what they see in this guy. Artie Burns does have potential. I feel like Sensabaugh is what he is. He reminds me of like a Ross Cockrell. It may be a solid cornerback, but he's nothing special and he's not the answer. So I know what Tomlin's doing. He's trying to light a fire under Artie Burns by putting Sensabaugh in, having him split time. And if anyone's going to replace Artie Burns on the outside, I'd rather it be Cameron Sutton than Cody Sensabaugh. But at the same time, there's a lot of decisions that have been made with his team this year that I don't understand. So I'm going to say my 0 Sensabaugh primarily because of I've never seen a defender look so bad trying to defend a pass than when Mike Evans caught that touchdown pass. I think Sensabaugh ran around in a circle looking for the football and then he could have pushed the receiver out of bounds. Just horrible. Just bad. Horrible.
I don't disagree. Sensabaugh, I mean, he tackled his girdle. I mean, hell, the way he was trying to tackle, it was pretty bad. I mean, I don't know. It's weird what they're doing to Burns. I understand your point. You got to let the guy play. You got to let the guy play through it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the options are good. I just don't think the options are good. So, that's kind of where it is with that secondary. And that secondary is going to have to get coached up and have to get better.
Okay. True or false time, folks. It's a segment we've been running since the summer. I think it just breaks things up. I think I like this segment a lot. So we are going to say a statement, and then we're going to say whether we think it's true or false. Sometimes we agree. More than often, we disagree. So let's go number 1. I hate that we're still talking about this guy, but yet it's important, I guess. Le'Veon Bell will play football this year. Lance, true or false?
True. And the reason why it's true is because it's the whole accrual. The issue with the accrual. He has to play to accrue to get to unrestricted free agency. And I think ultimately that's where Le'Veon Bell wants to be, is an unrestricted free agent. I think he wants to control his fate next year. And at the same time, he wants to limit the hits on his body. It's just going to cost him roughly $7 million to get 150 touches or whatever it may be. So I think that he is going to play in the NFL this year. I think he can't afford for the Steelers to have his rights next year, and the scenario be a trade next year where the Steelers kind of de facto kind of control where he wants to go. But in that scenario, Le'Veon has a lot of control because he has to be under contract to be traded. I don't think he wants to go through that song and dance with the Steelers next year. So I think he is going to play football in 2018. True.
I'm going to say false. I don't think Le'Veon Bell plays this year. I think the Steelers keep his rights, and I don't think they exercise those rights next year. I think next year they don't franchise tag him, nothing like that. I think they just let him go. Now, I'm not sure, and Lance, maybe you can answer this. I'm not sure exactly what the ruling is on unrestricted free agencies. Now, if he decides he's not playing and the Steelers still own his rights, they can, the franchise tag would have to be reapplied, correct?
Correct.
But if they don't apply that tag, then he becomes an unrestricted free agent.
I believe so. I believe so, but I don't think they have any incentive to do that because you want some compensation. But if they lose him anyway,
they would get compensation.
They
would get a compensatory pick if he were to leave in free agency, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean,
hold that thought. Let's go to our next one. The
Okay.
next one is Le'Veon Bell will be traded this year. True or false? Go ahead.
I'm going to say false. Because there are a couple of factors I think that make the trade difficult. One, you can't sign Le'Veon Bell, according to the CBA, to a long-term contract. The only thing that he could play under this year is the tag, and it's going to be a reduced tag amount. So, and there's a question of when is he going to report as well. So if you're going to trade Le'Veon Bell, you have to figure out a team that is willing to give you probably third round compensation and a team that he wants to play for and the team that wants to sign him to a long-term contract. All those things have to line up for him to be traded. But still, he doesn't get what he ultimately wants if he gets traded this year, which is to become an unrestricted free agent and control where he wants to play next year. So I don't think he's going to get traded this year. I think he's going to play for the Steelers this year. He's going to come in after the bye and become an unrestricted free agent in, what does that be? That would be 2019-2020 season next year.
Okay, I'm going to say false as well, but there's going to be a caveat here. I think that the Steelers are going to wait. He's not coming anytime soon. I think they're going to wait. They've already put it out there to the public that they're listening to offers. And they're going to see maybe someone has a running back that tears up a knee. You know, we already saw it in Washington. They signed Adrian Peterson. And maybe it's someone like the Dallas Cowboys. Zeke Elliott gets hurt. Well, next thing you know, maybe they call the Pittsburgh Steelers and say, what would it take? You know, if they don't get one of those teams in one of those scenarios, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to rescind the tag. And I think they're going to say, you know what? We do not want you coming in here. And especially if the Steelers start playing well. If the Steelers start playing well and they're winning a lot of games, the last thing they want is Le'Veon Bell and all that drama that'll come with answering questions about what the teammate said, answering questions about the pay, answering questions about what his agent said. That is the last thing this team wants. I don't think they want him ever stepping foot in that locker room again. If they don't get a trade they like, they rescind the tag. He becomes an unrestricted free agent. They get compensation based on where he goes, how much he makes, most likely a third-round draft pick as a compensatory pick. That's just my thought. But I don't think they get a trade partner because, like you said, they would have to – now they can negotiate a one-year deal. So someone could say, hey, you know, we'll pay you the full 14.5 for 6 weeks of work, and he could go there. But that's between he and the team. It'll be interesting. I don't think they get that done. There's just too many caveats in that contract, in that franchise tag situation. I'm going to say false, though. I don't think they get a trade, but I don't think he plays for the Steelers. I think if anything, worst case scenario, they rescind the tag. So go ahead.
Jeff, I'm looking at the live chat. Reed Overend is hilarious. He wrote, he looked like Vince Wilfork on that jet ski and moved to tight end might be in order. That hey, Reed, hey man, that's the comment of the year so far. He did look juicy. It's appropriate. That's what his nickname. It looked like if you squeezed his skin, gravy might come out. It looked like he was sweating brown gravy on that jet ski. He is right. He might be a D end or a tight end. Help the Steelers with some pass rush. Maybe he could be Hargrave's backup. But yeah, he did not look like he was in shape. He looked like he was living his best life.
He's probably got YOLO tattooed on his body somewhere. So okay, are we ready to move on from him?
Yes, we can.
All right, excuse me. Let's go to the next one. We're talking about the Steelers defense now. And the Steelers defense will finish in the top 15 in scoring defense. True or false? Go ahead, Lance.
I think that's absolutely false. Capital F, capital A, capital L, capital S, capital E. Number 15 right now in scoring defense is the Seattle Seahawks at 21.3. The Steelers are currently at 30. They would have to shave off a touchdown and a field goal to get to 21. No way, no how, not a nunca, ain't happening. Cody Sensabaugh is your starting cornerback. You think that's going to happen with Cody Sensabaugh and Cam Sutton playing corner? Forget about it. Absolutely false.
I'm going to say false as well for everything that he just said. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, I just think that this defense is is one that gets scored on. And it's been that way for 2 years. Last year, they couldn't stop the big play to save their life. They picked up where they left off. We hope the tackling would improve. It hasn't really. So there you have it. Let's go on to the next one. I thought of this one. I was proud of this one, by the way. I talked about Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster will end the season with more receiving yards than Antonio Brown. True or false?
As much as I was so convinced of my false for the previous question of the top 15 defense, it's an absolute capital TRUE. Juju is on a ridiculous pace this year. I mean, if Juju continues to get the number of targets that he's getting, Juju's going to put up more. He's going to put up more numbers. I mean, until a third wide receiver emerges, and Vance McDonald is not going to be that guy. Vance is going to get hurt. I mean, I hate to jinx the guy. As good as that stiff arm was, I'm surprised that Vance didn't hurt himself doing it. Vance is not going to be on the field for the remainder of the season. He just can't stay healthy. If he were to stay healthy, I think that would give another person that could take some pressure off of AB, where AB could get the touches that he needs to beat Juju. But Juju right now, I mean, I mean, Jeff, you're right. It's something. I mean, Juju is averaging 118.7 yards per game receiving. I mean, that's just absolutely fantastic with a catch percentage of 70%. He's just putting up astronomical numbers, and he's getting a bunch of targets. Got 19 against the Chiefs, 11 against the Bucks. He's getting 13 targets a game. Juju is going to have more receiving yards than AB. Is he a better player? No, but he will have more yards.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's true. I think it's true if both players stay healthy, even because let's compare the 3-game statistics for these two players. Okay, Juju Smith-Schuster has 27 receptions to Antonio Brown's 24. Now targets, Antonio Brown has 6 more targets at 42 than Juju's 38, and for yards, Antonio Brown's 210 to Juju's 356. Okay, so I look at those numbers, and Antonio Brown's averaging 8.8 yards per catch. That's awful. That's one of the worst. That's one of the worst numbers amongst primetime elite receivers in the league. That's one of the worst numbers in the league right now. And the crazy thing is that he's getting those targets. He has more targets than Juju, but you know what? Juju's taking advantage of man one-on-one coverage, and he and Roethlisberger are starting to really develop a chemistry in terms of just look at that third down play, or it might have been second down. Whatever down it was on the Monday Night Football game, when Roethlisberger steps up in the pocket, moves to his right, it was Juju that knew to stop and go against the grain because that's where the defender was going away from him. The defender was following Roethlisberger, and that's how he threw across his body. It was a beautiful play. That shows chemistry. That shows that Roethlisberger trusts him in the clutch, and it's not all reliant on Antonio Brown, and that pisses Antonio Brown off. But at the same time, it could be better for the Steelers offense. And, is it crappy that Antonio Brown's pace that he had set the previous 4 or 5 years could be like decreasing a tad or a smidge, as you want to call it? I don't care. If the offense is more prolific, if the offense is more balanced from a receiving standpoint, I'm all for it. So we both say true on that one, that we think that Juju, if everyone stays healthy, will end up with more receiving yards than Antonio Brown. Okay. Let's go to the last one here. This is number 5, and that is James Conner. We talked about Le'Veon Bell. Let's talk about the guy that's filling his shoes right now. The one thing that Le'Veon Bell always said, and still does, is how he's such a good receiver. He should be known as a number 2 and paid as a number 2 receiver. We suggested that James Conner will finish the season with, what did you want to do? Would you want to say receptions or receiving yards? I can't remember.
Receptions. Will he have more receptions than Le'Veon Bell had last year? Le'Veon had 85 receptions last year.
All right.
I say false. But if he remains healthy, it will be really close. Because right now, he's averaging 5 receptions a game. You multiply that out over 16, that's 80 receptions. So if he sneaks a 7 reception game in there, maybe an 8 reception game and a 4, somewhere like that, and has a spike somewhere, in the games over the course of the season, I think he gets really close. But I wanted to illustrate this because what we've heard Le'Veon Bell say over and over and over, that he's a number 2 receiver. And I've argued that that's bull caca. It's just more of a function of the offense. He's not really running routes. He's not running the route tree. And a player like James Conner, if he can get 80 receptions, I really think that's telling when it comes to Le'Veon Bell and his value as a receiver. It's deceptive. I mean, because you can see the targets and the catches that James Conner is getting. He's not running routes. They're just functions of pass protection. They're like the last option in the route. And so he gets the ball. So I think it's false, but I think he's going to get 80, 75 plus catches, which will be really reflective and say a lot to just what Le'Veon Bell is saying and how false that claim is.
So you said false. You don't think he's going to
Yes.
end up? Okay.
But it'll be close.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers. 15 receptions currently. Like you said, that pace is pretty good. I could see games where he gets over 5, but I could also see ones where he gets less. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say false. And I also agree that it's going to be close. Like I look at this game with the Ravens, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. And I see an opportunity for him, James Conner, to potentially be a mismatch from the slot and out of the backfield, just like Le'Veon Bell was. And I don't understand. A lot of people said that James Conner doesn't have good hands. That was kind of a knock on him when he came out of Pitt. I haven't seen anything yet from this guy in the preseason this year or in the regular season to suggest that that's truth. I think he's proven that he does have decent hands. He doesn't have a drop, I don't believe. He had that remarkable catch on that didn't count, but it was a one-handed grab on the sideline against the Chiefs at home in week 2. So I think it'd be close. I really would love it actually if he did get more, because then, like you said, someone can go tell Le'Veon to go put that in his pipe and smoke it. So, no pun intended. All right. So let's leave true or false. Those are some good ones this week, and let's go to the Ravens game. And I'll go ahead and start talking about the offense. Now, the Baltimore Ravens offense, for those of you that have not watched the Ravens this year, I do want to preface this by saying let's look at their opponents. Okay, in week 1. They played a high school junior varsity team called the Buffalo Bills. In week 2, they got beat by the Cincinnati Bengals on a short week on Thursday Night Football. And on week 3, they beat, it was a rather close contest, a Denver Broncos team that I'm not really sold on just yet, especially with their quarterback situation. So you take that for what it's worth, but I take that into account when I look at the offense. So Lance had already talked about the offensive numbers that they're putting up. I believe they're 5th in the NFL in terms of points scored per game. This is not your Ravens, typical Ravens offense. The Joe Flacco chuck it deep and pray for a pass interference call is still alive and well, folks. Don't think that has gone away. But they have receivers now with Michael Crabtree, John Brown, Willie Snead is there now. They've got a couple tight ends. I'm not sure if their number 1 draft pick is going to play or not. But you know what? The thing is that it's going to come down to this game in terms of the offense is, can they protect Joe Flacco? Joe Flacco and against the Denver Broncos was hit often. And I don't know that I have the sack numbers in front of me personally, but I watched the game and he was under duress a lot. And so with that Pittsburgh Steelers defensive front, they're going to have to get Joe Flacco off his mark. Even with all that said, and they do have a decent running game, this offense concerns me on multiple levels. The first is that they do run the football. So unlike Tampa Bay, who doesn't even try to run the football, the Ravens will stay committed to the football with Collins if they're gashing them. And we know that the Steelers can be gashed in the run. Also, they now have the receiving weapons to not only stretch the field, but to really pick you apart in the pass. The Steelers are really going to have to be on their P's and Q's. The communication is going to have to be key. They're going to have to win their one-on-one matchups, and that is concerning. But ultimately, I look at this offense and just think, I still don't think Joe Flacco is any good, personally. I think that Joe Flacco is average at best. I see some of the throws he's making are better. He's a little bit more accurate than last year. It's a contract year for him. And for a lot of players, that's a big thing. He's got Lamar Jackson. They throw Lamar Jackson out there as like a receiver sometimes, like these little gadget plays. I don't know. The Ravens offense has looked good so far this season. They've put up a lot of points. Say what you want about the teams that they've played against. They're still getting the job done. I mentioned it earlier in case you're late joining us on the live show on YouTube. They're 12 for 12 in the red zone, and that's impressive. So those folks thinking that the Ravens are just going to go out there and stumble their way into Heinz Field offensively, I am not buying that. So there you go, Lance. Anything to add on that offense?
Well, the red zone numbers are significant. The 12 for 12, 100%, the points per game, the 32.3, the receiving options that they have in John Brown. They have a receiving threat. They have a deep receiving threat. They have an intermediate threat in Crabtree, excuse me. And they have a pretty good tight end in Andrews that can move well and attack you in the seams. I think what we saw in the Tampa Bay game, we're going to see teams attack the Steelers in a similar fashion by going heavy, keeping in multiple tight ends to keep Bostic and to keep Vince Williams on the field, then spread you out, then attack those linebackers. So it's going to be interesting with Burnett back, what type of approach the Steelers will take defensively. Will they go lighter to try to play more coverage? But that's the dilemma in this game, because if you look at the numbers that Alex Collins put up against the Steelers last year, 202 yards, 27 carries, 7.5 yards per carry. They ran on the Steelers last year 41 times, but 234 yards, 5.7 yards per carry, averaged almost 120 yards per game. They could go the route of running the football on the Steelers. I think the Ravens in this football game are going to want to be balanced. I think they're going to try to keep the Steelers offense off the field, slowly matriculate the ball downfield, then get really aggressive in their plus territory. That's where I think you're going to see them take some shots to John Brown, and they're going to take some shots to Crab in the red zone, because they want this Steeler offense on the sidelines. They want this Steeler defense on the field, because it is absolutely the weak link. So I think it's going to be very interesting how the Steelers handle this Raven offense, but they're going to have to be stout up front, stop Alex Collins, and get some pass rush. They're going to have to do both, because if they can run the football successfully, the Steelers will not win this game. And the Steelers have not yet shown that they can sufficiently stop Alex Collins. So it's going to be tough, I think, on this defense on Sunday night.
Okay. What do you think about the Baltimore defense?
Well, the defense right now, statistically, the number one defense in the National Football League. What that means over the course of the first 3 weeks, I don't know for certain. They played Buffalo the first game. I thought they played okay against Cincinnati. Not great. I thought they played pretty well against Denver last week. They've played in some elements the last, 2 of the 3 games. Well, Baltimore typically plays the Steelers offense pretty well. Last year, they got torn up with the 39 points at home, but that was a shootout, 39-38. But again, I think it comes down to pass protection on both sides of the ball. Whatever offensive line plays better might be the team that wins. Whoever can keep that quarterback upright, I think both passing games and both offenses can make some plays. So I think offensively, the Steelers are better, not better by leaps and bounds, but defensively, the Ravens are much better up front and much better in their secondary. So I think the balance of it tips sort of towards the Ravens, just because the difference in their defenses.
Have we heard anything about Mosley? Is he back or is he playing?
I'm not sure about the Mosley injury. I know he got nicked up earlier in the year. I'm not sure if he's back. I do know that I think this is the first day for injury report. Am I correct?
Yeah, I don't think he practiced today, but the Ravens had a ton of players that didn't practice. Like Suggs didn't practice. I just didn't know it because Mosley was originally they thought it could be a long-term injury, but last I heard it wasn't as bad as they thought. He's a key cog for that. Eric Weddle is the one that's calling defensive plays now in the back portion of the defense. So that's something to talk about. But
I'm looking at an article from a guy, Edward Lee, from the Baltimore Sun, and he's reporting that C.J. Mosley practiced on a limited basis today. Okay. So he's saying that, possibly he may participate because he did get nicked up in the game against the Bengals. So, anytime you put Mosley, in that middle portion, that, the guts of that defense, C.J. Mosley's an outstanding player, and that only helps your defense more.
Okay. I like that breakdown a lot. Let's get to predictions, Lance. Who wins the game on Sunday Night Football and why?
There are just some numbers to me that are very troubling. One, the Steelers are giving up basically 30 points a game. It's very troubling. Steelers have given up 10 touchdown passes, the most in the National Football League. The Ravens are 100% in the red zone and are averaging 32.3. Now, most of the time you could throw all that out because it's Steelers, Ravens, and it's not Ravens week in Pittsburgh because there's no such thing as Ravens week in Pittsburgh. If you're from Pittsburgh, we don't have weeks for teams. Teams have weeks for us. It is Steelers week in Baltimore. If you're a Baltimore Ravens fan and you're listening to the program, you know what's happening. You know the same thing in Cincinnati. It's Steeler week. And in Cleveland, we don't have other team weeks. So first of all, let me say that. But I don't know if any of that's going to help the Steeler defense when it comes to Sunday. That's a fan's pride, being from the north side, being from Pittsburgh, being from the same area as the Rooney family. That's the pride I feel when they play the Ravens. Unfortunately, I can't play. Maybe fortunately, I can't play. But either way, I can't give them any help. And this is a defense that needs a lot of help. And I don't know if they have the help. So with all that said, I like the Baltimore Ravens to go into Heinz Field and win a squeaker. And the difference is going to be special teams. I think Boswell will miss a kick and Tucker will not. And that'll be the difference. And the Ravens win 31-28.
First and foremost, we should all be fortunate that Lance is not playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers currently. I just know he's got those foot and back injuries that linger, and that can be tough, man. I don't know what position you play, but
I'm good for a couple snaps, baby. couple snaps.
Goal line situation, right? You can dive.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, I can do what Daniel McCullers did. I can hold on and stand up and get pushed like a sled. I could do that.
All right. Okay. My prediction is this game, and I said it at the beginning of the show, it's not going to be your typical Ravens Steelers game, in my opinion. It's going to be trending towards a lot of points. I wish I knew. I know the Steelers opened as favorites. I want to say they were 4-point favorites at home. I'm not sure what the over-under is. That line is interesting to me to see what Vegas thinks will be the over-under line to try to get some money on this game. I guarantee it's mid-40s. I'm going to guess. Are you looking it up, Lance?
No, I wasn't looking it up.
Damn it. Look it up, will you? Okay. Look,
I don't gamble, so I don't know where to go. Do I go to Westgate? I mean, where do I go?
Go to Google and you type in what's the over-under for Steelers Ravens week 4. That's what you do.
Thank you, degenerate gambler guy.
Anyways, I like the Steelers at home. And Steeler fans should be pumped as hell that Lance picked against them, because whenever he picks against the Steelers, like he did on Monday night, they end up winning. So Lance, he's a hater. He picked the Ravens. I like the Steelers at home. I don't think the Ravens are as good as advertised because I think they've played a bunch of crap teams, and the only decent team they've played, they lost to in Cincinnati. The Pittsburgh defense, it is what it is, but I do think they're going to be able to get pressure on Flacco. Flacco's due for a couple mistakes. I think Ben Roethlisberger plays well. He continues his solid play, and Antonio Brown loves to torch the Baltimore Ravens almost every time they play. Now, I will say this. I want to watch James Conner because Le'Veon Bell is the guy that's always stepped up big time against these Ravens, and I want to see if they're going to be committed to getting him going like they typically did with Le'Veon Bell. I want to see if are they going to give him the carries that he might need early in the game and not be stupid about it. Don't come out and go run, pass. That's just dumb. That's high school football stuff. Mix it in, be creative, and for crying out loud, if Randy Fichtner and Ben Roethlisberger don't go back and take the first 3 weeks scripts that they wrote up to start the game and burn them and bury them, goodness gracious, awful. They have to come out and have a good start offensively and defensively, try to get a lead, and then don't take your foot off the gas. I say Steelers win. We'll go with see, not many field goals. So we'll go with 30. What did you say? 31-28?
31-28. Ravens.
Okay, I'm going to go with 35-31 Pittsburgh. 35. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think that's how they're going to have to win games. Period. Shootout. So
you want that? You want that betting information, Jeff?
I just want
to
know
I got it right here.
What's the over/under line?
The over/under. I'm gonna give it to you all since I had to look up some gambling stuff for all you possible degenerates out there. Well, if you like to gamble and wager on football, I'm not gonna call you a degenerate. Jeff is a degenerate, but you guys aren't. The money line is a plus 150 for Baltimore. It's a minus 180 for the Steelers. You guys know what the money line is. The over/under for the game is a plus 51.
Oh, wow. Whoo, I guess 45 is 51. Vegas sees it like we do, man. They are going to be putting up some points in Pittsburgh.
And the Steelers are 3-point favorites.
Nice. That's a typical home. Team spread.
That means it's even. 3 points at home means it's even.
So there's no hook. There's no
hook, no half, no half. It's 3, which means Vegas is saying that this is a pick'em game.
Essentially, yes. All right, so we have a couple questions here, Lance. I want to go rapid fire with you. We've from the live chat. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Who needs to step up the most to help the team win this Sunday night?
Artie Burns.
All righty. With the offensive line healthy, will James Conner play more like he did in week 1 or more like he did in the other 2 weeks?
More like week 1.
Okay. Do you see them using Roosevelt Nix more?
No.
Okay. They did. They went jumbo at the end of the Monday night game when they needed the yards.
I think they'll spread the Ravens out. If they think they can pass protect, they're going to spread the Ravens out. Ben's throwing the ball 40-plus times. Steeler fans, look. He's throwing for 5,000 this year, and he's going to throw it over 40 times this year. Do the math. 16 times 40. It's a gang of passing attempts. It's going to happen.
Would you, if both sides agreed to it, would you trade Le'Veon Bell for Earl Thomas?
Yes.
Is he a strong safety or free safety?
Free safety.
All right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And then Thomas said that he would take Cody Sensabaugh over Lance on the Steelers, which I agree with 100%.
You better.
That someone wrote, nah, Lance might be able to play better coverage than Burns and Sensabaugh.
My change of direction is bad, man. I got a bad foot. So if they got me in coverage, man, it's stealing what, candy from a baby.
Okay, we got one more. Bigger threat in the north to the Steelers, the Bengals, Ravens, or Browns?
I don't know. It's not the Browns for sure. The Baker show was nice. That was cute. Yeah, that was cute. I'm gonna go Cincinnati. I don't like Andy Dalton that much. I think the coach is bad, but I'm gonna go Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati overall as a roster is the most talented team of any other team in the division. Defensively, I think they're better than everybody else. You guys don't see Jeff in the background. I do, and I'm wondering, like, what is he doing? But I'm gonna say the Bengals. All
right. That's good. Yeah, I think I'm not a buyer in the Ravens, man. I think that the other foot's waiting to drop, and it might happen on Sunday night. So I live in Maryland. I have to deal with this crap all the time. I can't stand it, but it is what it is. So, all right. Any WTFs, or are you good?
Oh, I do have a WTF. I have one WTF.
Shoot, go for it.
Come on, Debo. Come on, James. Come on, James Harrison. Come on, man. I mean, you're going to tell the guy So I don't know, listeners, if you didn't hear, James Harrison is making the media circuit. And, I think he was on Undisputed. And he's actually kind of funny. I mean, some of the comments that he said about Vance McDonald, how he'd have to see that man after the game if he stiff armed him like that, because he'd be embarrassed, and what he'd have to say to his girlfriend and or wife after the game. You might be embarrassed if a guy turned your name from Chris to Christina. Could be embarrassing. But to tell a guy in Le'Veon Bell to report and fake an injury, I mean, are you teaching your kids that at home, to be disingenuous and be dishonest? Come on, these are life lessons in here. I mean, these guys are paying you. You owe them your best effort. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's no integrity. That's really low. And I just don't. I don't know what the point is now at this point. I mean, they left on bad terms. I mean, but he's continuing to, throw dirt on the grave for some reason. I don't know. I don't get it. But to tell a player to come in and fake an injury, that's Bush. I mean, that's some real Bush stuff from Debo. And I like James Harrison as a player. Debo's one of the all-time great Steelers. But the fake injury stuff, what? WTF. WTF.
Well, I know why he's saying it.
I know too.
He's moving the needle, man. That's all he's doing. He knows that people are going to talk about it. He knows that websites are going to write about it. Fox is happy because it's promoting their show. It's all it is. No one cares. I don't care. He and Mark Madden got into a Twitter beef, and people were acting like it meant something. Who cares? So there you have it, folks. We got you primed and ready to go for the upcoming week's game. But if you still want more, we're talking fantasy football information. We're talking key matchups, players to watch. Make sure you join myself and Brian Anthony Davis tomorrow night. That's Thursday for the Steelers preview show. It's getting better and better each week. And I think that this week is going to be maybe a little something special. It's the Ravens. It's a unique game. Prime time again, second week in a row. Make sure, if you don't, go to behindthesteelcurtain.com. You can find any of our podcast articles. In that article are links where you can actually subscribe to our channel. That's the BTSC channel, which houses all of these shows. Subscribe if you're an Android user. There's a link. If you're an Apple user, there's a link there as well. And if you didn't know we have a YouTube channel, we do. Go to youtube.com. Type in BTSC Steelers Radio, subscribe, give us thumbs up. We appreciate all the support. We've got a nice little community going here, Lance. Anything to say to that group before we call it a night?
Well, thank you guys for chiming in, and we try to give you guys the best content. So when we were talking about the Le'Veon Bell stuff and the trade and the rescinding and all that stuff, I wanted to reach out to Ian Whetstone. Ian Whetstone is my salary cap sensei. Does a fantastic job for Jim Wex and those guys over at SteelCityInsider.com. Ian's fantastic, one of the best guys to do it. I wish Ian would go out and put a website, because Ian is fantastic. So I asked Ian what would happen if the Steelers rescind the tag on Le'Veon Bell. And he wrote the following: he would immediately become a free agent, able to sign with any team for any length of time, and the Steelers would get no compensation in any form, including no compensatory pick consideration next year. So because of that, they're not going to rescind that.
Well, I've heard otherwise. I've heard that because if any player leaves in free agency, regardless of how it happens, you'd have to go back, and when the last time a franchise tag has been rescinded was Josh Norman with the Panthers when he went to Washington. You'd have to go back and see if the Panthers were given a compensatory pick for him leaving. And I'm not sure. Maybe Ian knows more than I do, and so I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure I've heard from somewhere that's not the national media, that there was a local media, that they would still get compensatory compensation, but who the hell knows? So if that's the case, if they wouldn't get a compensatory pick, they're not rescinding the tag.
No way.
But if they did, I still stand by my word, and I could see them doing that. So, well, thanks for looking that up. I appreciate that, Lance. And as always, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week on another episode of The Standard is a Standard.